Welcome, everyone. This is our 29th annual Westheimer Peace Symposium. We are so thankful to have members of the Westheimer family with us tonight. Debbie and Dick Westheimer, seated over here on your left side of the auditorium. And you'll hear remarks from President Jim Reynolds and from Tom Westheimer, who traveled from New Hampshire to be with us tonight. So it is a very special evening for us. My name is Tanya Moss. On behalf of the Westheimer Peace Symposium Committee, which consists of staff, faculty, and students, I welcome you to our symposium. This has been in the planning for 12 months. We feel that this is a space where our students, faculty, staff, and community members can come together and think about 4 key issues: peace in the environment, peace in the nature of war, peace and social justice, and peace and nonviolence. This year, we are considering peace and the environment. Please be sure to turn off your cell phones, to be attentive to our amazing speaker who we're so fortunate to have and who drove and who must have gotten up around 4 a.m. this morning to be with us. Thank you all for coming out. I'm excited to see you here, and I'm going to turn over. The next speaker will be President Jim Reynolds of our college. Thank you.
Good evening, friends. Let me also take this opportunity to welcome you to the evening session of the 29th Annual Westheimer Peace Symposium. It's my privilege to serve Wilmington College as its 18th president. Tanya's asked if I would give a short set of remarks to help those present to understand the significance of the Westheimer Peace Symposium for our campus, and I'm glad to do so tonight. But before I make those comments, I'd first like to acknowledge the vision and generous support of the late Charles and May Westheimer, who created this symposium in 1991 as a forum for the college to explicitly promote peacemaking, social justice, humanitarian service, and respect for all persons. We're still grateful for their support and the enduring value of their vision. Through their support, the Westheimers have allowed us to provide a space where important voices can be heard and significant teaching and learning can take place. For the 29th time in our college's history, we're proud to again offer a program that relates so directly to the mission of Wilmington College. Our Quaker heritage places peace and social justice at the heart of our mission. These values are fundamentally important to teaching and learning here. One question that I'm asked often and have been asked more often recently is, in what way is Wilmington College a Quaker college? I often answer in a way that draws attention to the programs and events that we hold on our campus, and invariably mention this symposium as a strong connection to our Quaker heritage because of the thematic elements that are part of the development of this symposium each year. But what I'd really like to answer is the question, what's different about Wilmington College than other colleges or universities of which you've been a part? Because the answer to that question is really the answer to why this symposium is so significant to our college. The difference about Wilmington College is that every day, through programming, classes, events, and conversations that take place across campus, we intentionally try to have our students encounter our core values. No other place that I've worked in higher education has done that. Thus, the significance of the Westheimer Peace Symposium is that it provides the opportunity for us to have students encounter or be confronted with the truths of the world around us. When we do that, we live out our mission and values, and we all gain something from the experience. Peace and social justice are universal values that we all seek in one form or another. The Westheimer Peace Symposium gives our students, faculty, staff, and visitors a space in which to practice our values and codify them into a thoughtful worldview. Each of the 29 symposiums have led us into discussions that ultimately springboarded us into action. And that is a significant thing for a small college like Wilmington to be able to do. So again, for those of you who are new to our campus, welcome. We're glad that you're here to share in our quest for peace and social justice. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Tom Westheimer, the first and the best version of my parents' 5 children. However, my siblings don't quite agree and think the subsequent versions were much better. I must say, since I've come, I've had this very uncomfortable feeling because anytime someone says Westheimer, I assume I'm in trouble. And people keep saying that over and over again. But I'm honored to be here today and to represent my family at this event. And I want to thank Wilmington College for carrying on my parents' legacy of acting for the benefit of others. My parents were peace activists in their own quiet way. For them, giving back to the community was very important, and always to treat everyone with respect and kindness. Their example of hosting foreign students in our home was a big influence on my joining the American Peace Corps, which led me to living in Iran, India, and the Canadian Peace Corps in Thailand for over 14 years. Living in those countries and speaking their languages enabled me to have a different perspective and appreciation of other cultures, but especially my own. When I was asked to say a few words at this conference, I wondered what meaningful things could I say about peace? Peace is not tangible. Peace is having a safe place to live. Peace is the absence of fear. Peace is having health care if sick. Peace is having food to eat, clean air, and of course, clean, safe water. As we know, access to any of these things is sadly not a given for many people today. However, now is not the time to give up, get depressed, or angry. Now is the time to take action, and we've heard this over and over again today. So I encourage us all to, in our own ways, to work towards improving our community and thus peace. Our common needs unite us, and we must not dilute our efforts by being divided by political parties, religions, races, and countries of origin. We can be encouraged that on September 20th, up to 6 million people around the world took part in the global climate strike. That's action. I'm so grateful to be here, and I look forward to hearing from Winona LaDuke about her amazing work. Thank you again for inviting me. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Tom, and thanks, Jim. Next, I invite Jerry Neri, one of the co-founders of the Greater Cincinnati Native American Coalition, to introduce our invited speaker, Winona LaDuke. Jerry.
I actually had to judge how tall the last 2 people were, whether or not I'd reach the mic. I would like to recognize those people who were most affected by the doctrines of discovery and forced removal, and whose lands this school and our cities are built on, the Miamia and Shawnee people. At this time, again, my name is Jerry Neri. I'm with the Greater Cincinnati Native American Coalition, and I am honored to introduce a good friend an activist, both environmental and Native American activist, and an author as well, Winona LaDuke.
Ani Nindaway Maganaduk. Hello, my relatives. How are y'all doing out there? Miguchia, Aumenobamadaziwan. Thanks so much for this good day here. Benesi Kwe and Jinikas, Makwando Dam, Gababani Ka, Gishkaniganing, and Dunjaba. That's Anishinaabe Moen, which is related to Shawnee. These are people that are related to us here, and I'm honored to be in this territory. And thank you so much for the privilege of being here with you tonight. So I'm a water protector. That's what I am, Ndao water protector. This is a water protector too. This is from downtown Duluth, a place where Native women have often gone missing and have often been murdered. A lot of times we're invisible in the North Country, but she's quite visible. She's about 30 feet tall and 20 feet wide on 2nd Street and 2nd Avenue. Art's done by a man named Votan, and I'm going to talk about what it is to be a water protector in this time and in this moment. I have to see how to, there we go. This is where I live, Gawawiye Gamug. It's Watebaga Gizis is the name in our language for this moon. It means the leaves changing color moon. And the moon that follows this is Banak Weo Gizis, which is when the leaves fall. Gashkadno Gizis, when it freezes up. Manitou Gizis Soons, little spirit moon. Gishi Manitou Gizis, great spirit moon. Nemebene Gizis, Unabana Gizis, that's like March. Hard-crusted snow moon, also the moon that you don't want to do a faceplant in the snow. I thought you might like to hear a little more of our language. And did you notice that none of those moons was named after a Roman emperor? Just to point out, you can have an entire worldview that has nothing to do with empire. I live on the White Earth Reservation in northern Minnesota. This is some art from our territory. Y'all look like a pretty smart bunch, but I'm not sure if you've seen this kind of art. This is Anishinaabe art. This is acrylic by Ray Thomas. He's deceased. But it's based on more of our historical pictographs and birch bark scroll. And I like to show this art. It shows inside the beings. It's called, there's spirit lines inside the beings. And then a lot of times in our art, there's lines that connect each other. The piece is called We Are All in the Same Boat. Which is, I kind of think, the position we're all in today, as we're all in the same boat. But I also like to talk about this art because I was an undergraduate at Harvard University, and if you wanted to see the art of Europe, you went to the Fine Arts Department. If you wanted to see indigenous art, you went to anthropology. And so what I want to talk a little bit about is the valuation of knowledge, and suggest that it's possible that the problems we face today are many, and that it is possible that the solutions to the problems we face today will not be found in the paradigm which created those problems. I want us to think about how we, in the same canoe, in the same boat, will move on together, or how we will evolve. We call it to the 8th fire. This is where I live too. This is the Thompsons. Menominike Gizis, the wild rice-making moon. That is what we just finished on my reservation, and that is what it looks like in my territory right now. We take to the lakes and rivers with our canoes and our poles and our sticks, and we harvest our wild rice. That is, I think that is Chippewa Lake in the middle of our reservation. But you know, in a worldwide scale, indigenous people are about 4% of the world's population, but we guard over 75% of the world's biodiversity. Our lands are lands which still retain great biodiversity, including our sacred wild rice. So I want to talk a little bit about making America great again. So this is my idea of when America was great. My idea of when America was great is when there were 8,000 varieties of corn. That's tremendous agrobiodiversity. And those varieties, you know, corn doesn't exist. I understand this is a school with some agriculture work in it, so you know this, but corn doesn't exist in nature. It's teosinte, is a grass. And so all of the corn varieties, those 8,000 varieties that are there, those were created by humans with nature. And I like to think about that because sometimes I really am not so keen on humans. I feel like we've botched up a lot of things. But corn is something that we have made beautiful. And you know, you are all a smart bunch, and you know that those 8,000 varieties of corn were not made by men in white suits. Those were made largely, those varieties were selected and preserved by largely indigenous women from the Western Hemisphere, who today, a good portion of the world's food remains, something that women grow and women serve. And women are really good at seed selection because we're the ones often that cook and preserve it. So you want to know what tastes good and what preserves well. And so that's when America was great, was when there were 8,000 varieties of corn and about 900 varieties of potatoes. America was great when there were 50 million buffalo. That's when America was great. America was great when passenger pigeons blackened the sky. And those 50 million buffalo that lived in the Northern Plains Territory lived on about 250 different species of grass because we had so much diversity in our grasslands. And a lot of the grass, the roots go 8 feet, 10 feet deep. And that is how the great topsoils were made. And so I just, want to remember, because that is actually what I believe in and what I want. I remember the America. I don't have any historical amnesia, and I don't have ecological amnesia. I remember that there was a time when our people used to be able to drink the water from every lake and from every river. That's when America was great. And this is then a little bit of what happened to America. This moment in time of a conflict between worldviews, and we could talk about subtler colonialism at different eras in time, but in some ways I feel like that this moment of a conflict between two different worldviews, this military-industrial complex of worldviews, which came upon the prairies, came upon our land, and a view of life that is from an indigenous point of view. I often think of this treaty that was signed between my people, the Anishinaabe, and the Haudenosaunee, or the Six Nations Iroquois Confederacy. And that was a treaty of peace. It is known as the One Dish, One Spoon Wampum, or the One Dish, One Spoon Treaty. That treaty was signed in they think it was 1706, is what they say. That agreement was made between my people, the Anishinaabe, and the Haudenosaunee. And they say that treaty, the One Dish, referred to the Ohio River Valley. They said that that was the land that the Shawnees, being our relatives, and the Six Nations also favored, the great hunting lands of this territory. They called it the dish. This is all one dish, and they said, we all eat from one dish, so let us be careful what we take from that dish, and let's care for the dish. We all eat from one dish. That's what the One Dish, One Spoon Treaty was. And the spoon, when you are eating and you share a utensil or a spoon with your relative, with someone, you become relatives. And so that treaty signified that two great nations would acknowledge and care for the same land and treat each other as relatives. And so our people have a long history of making peace with our relatives and peace with our neighbors here in North America. The world that we live in today is a world that's predicated on an entirely different set of values. I call it Wendigo economics, which means the economics of a cannibal. And in our prophecies, our people were told that this time would be known as the time of the seventh fire. And in this time, our people were told that we would have a choice between two paths. One path, they said, was well-worn, but it was scorched. And the other path was not well-worn, and it was green. And it would be our choice as Anishinaabe upon which path to proceed. And to be honest with you, I really feel like that's where we all are now. We're at this moment in time where we need to decide what we're going to do, and we need to move. So this is a little bit about where we got to and where we're at. I'm going to depress you for a couple of minutes, and then I'll offer the happy solutions. But this is what it looks like in the world of taking more than you need and not leaving the rest. This is what extractive capitalism looks like, and this is what capitalism looks like at the end of an era. This is called extreme extraction. And that's the era we're in now, and you know it here, and we know it across the country. That's to say that all the oil that was easy to get, it's not so easy to get anymore. That Oklahoma stuff, that's all gone. Those gushers, they're gone. And so everything that you want now is really more difficult to get. And because we live in a society where we've become addicts, essentially addicts to fossil fuels, we end up doing really extreme things to fill our addiction. That's just the fact of our situation. So let me give you an example. Extreme extraction is when you drill 20,000 feet under the ocean to get at some oil that's at the bottom of the ocean. And you think you're really smart, and you think you're doing good, until you end up with something like the Deepwater Horizon, right? Where you don't know how to stop that little problem that you started. That's extreme extraction. Extreme extraction is, you see it around here, is blowing off the tops of a bunch of mountains in Appalachia to get some coal that's not even going to stay in this country. It's going to go to India. Extreme extraction is fracking. Fracking is extreme extraction. That's when you have no oil left, and so what you do is you blow up the bedrock of Mother Earth, put 600 some chemicals down there under the assumption that what goes down will not come up, and hope that works out for you until you get a bunch of sinkholes and contaminated aquifers. And extreme extraction is the picture on the bottom there, which is the tar sands. Tar sands oil is the dirtiest oil in the world. And my battle over water has a lot to do with the tar sands. Amazing as it is, I live in a land of 10,000 lakes where half of my world is water. Half of my universe is water. And I have no oil. But yet the battle that I face today is the battle over oil pipelines. This is what extreme extraction looks like in the tar sands. And this is what it looks like on the land. This is the situation we're in today. This is actually a photo from Fort McMurray, which is in the heart of the tar sands. And this was fires that scorched Fort McMurray and south of the tar sands about 3 years ago. I don't know that you could see the skies being full of smoke, but our skies were full of smoke, and our moon was orange for days, for weeks upon time. The fires of Alberta burning that we could see still in Minnesota. But this picture could have been a picture taken anywhere. Because it was last year, I believe, that the entire West Coast was on fire, right? From California all the way up to British Columbia. We're in an era of disasters that we face today. And I understand there was a tornado, in Dayton? Is that right? We're facing disasters of biblical proportions. That's where we're at. And so the moment in time is the moment to see what we're going to do. And this is the cost of it. I'm an economist by training, and what I'll tell you is what you already know is no township, no city, no reservation, no tribe. Nobody has a budget for climate change. Nobody has that figured into their infrastructure. You and I live in a country, I'm always aggravated that I live in a first world country, right? This is a first world country, but my infrastructure has a D. We have a D in infrastructure and energy. And we have crumbling gas mains all over this country and crumbling water mains, and places like Flint, Michigan, in fact, don't have water. And all of that will worsen with climate change. Munich Re, the world's largest reinsuring agency, predicts that we'll be spending about 20% of world GDP on climate change disasters as of next year. No idea. All I know is that it's going up and it's going to get worse. And so the question is at what point are you going to try to do something about it? So this is what water protectors do. I've spent 7 years fighting a big tar sands pipeline. I spent 3 years fighting a fracked oil pipeline out of North Dakota. My community, the White Earth Reservation in northern Minnesota, as I said, we don't have any oil there. We have wild rice and lakes and rivers, but what we have is a corridor that a corporation called Enbridge has pipelines within it, but not on my reservation, but adjacent to it. And so for 3 years, the Enbridge Corporation tried to put a new pipeline in on my reservation. It was called the Sandpiper. It was fracked oil out of North Dakota, going to Superior, the object of Enbridge's affection. For 3 years, my community fought them. And in 2016, after a 3-year legal, regulatory, and a spiritual battle, we defeated Enbridge, and they closed their pipeline project. Yes, it is to say it is possible to defeat dumb projects. Let's just be honest, it was a bad idea. But we didn't defeat their interest, because the Enbridge Corporation purchased 28% of a pipeline known as the Dakota Access Pipeline, which is the pipeline that they then put on the north side of the Standing Rock Reservation. And so having won our small battle against Enbridge in my community, we saw what was going on in North Dakota, and so we went to North Dakota, like many people. I think some of you here, did some of you go to Standing Rock? The front row was, this is a go team, go team. Thank you. And the rest of you, thank you for your support of us. But this is what we found at Standing Rock. And so, in the discussion of human rights, what has happened in this country is that the rights of corporations supersede the rights of people. The rights of corporations supersede the rights of nature. And at some point in time, like now, we need to discuss what that means and figure out how to address that. Because you and I know that under the U.S. law, a corporation is considered a person in the courts. They're considered to have the interests and rights of a person, upheld by Citizens United. And in my personal and humble opinion, a corporation is not a person, because a person has a soul. A corporation has no soul. They should not have the same standing. But what has happened is that in an era of extreme energy extraction, in a desperate time, in a society which is basically jacked up on fossil fuels, let's just be honest, we've become people, and we live in a society where our rights are increasingly diminished by the rights of these corporations. And so when Enbridge moved out to North Dakota, they buttressed up the faulty and shaky financial situation of the Dakota Access Pipeline Energy Transfer Partners. And this is what ensued. And as soon as this started happening out there, I called Enbridge and I said, she's been sprayed. You can't really tell, but she's been sprayed by something out of their equipment, And this is the spraying that is going on, Yeah, and I was really grateful to see the photos in your exhibition on Standing Rock that is here in the room adjacent. But, these questions of should the rights of a corporation supersede the rights of a people? Now, this is one of my favorite photos. Secretly, I would like to be one of those young men. Don't they look cool? I just look super cool. I know those guys. But, it's like this moment in time, and to me, for a lot of us who were at Standing Rock, we know that there's like a Selma moment. A Selma moment. We refer to North Dakota. That is a state that people just fly across. Never look at it. Most people never going to go to North Dakota at all, right? Why would you go to North Dakota? You would go because of Standing Rock. But in that situation, what has happened? A lot of people left North Dakota. They went to California, they went to Minneapolis, they probably came to Ohio, anywhere but North Dakota. That civil society, civil society failed us in North Dakota. Let's just say, I give you an example, the ACLU, the American Civil Liberties Union, right? They had one person that covered North and South Dakota, right? Nobody wanted to work in North Dakota. So they had one person covers North and South Dakota. The Sierra Club has a couple people. So when there is no one to just stand against stupidity, racism, hatred, and fear, bad things develop. We call North Dakota, the deep north, the deep north. And that prevails to this day, in North Dakota. And I have to say, we felt it at Standing Rock. And I have to say that Minnesota shares some elements, but it is not the same as North Dakota. And this is what happens to your civil society when you let extreme extraction, and oil companies run your state. This is I talked a little bit about missing and murdered women, but the fact is that violence against women, violence on the whole, everything that is violent increases in the oil fields. It increases in those territories. And this, a lot of our Native women have been missing or murdered. But this isn't a billboard. This is a billboard in North Dakota. But this was not taken out by the Native community. This was taken out by the non-Native community, because of the sex trafficking. And so, at a certain point, I acknowledge that I am a fossil fuel addict. It's kind of like being, we need counseling for our fossil fuel addiction, right? But what happens is that when you're an addict, a lot of times, you know, you don't really care what happens just so you get your fix. And that's what has happened in North Dakota. And that's what's happened in a lot of places. And that to me is the essence of this transformation that we are going to make. This is some of our recognition of the missing and murdered women. This is an art installation. I think this was at the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C. So a little bit about oil and pipelines. I know there's a lot of oil out of Ohio. I think not the last time I was here, but the time before that, Guy was with me. We were at the Marathon shareholders meeting, right? Because for many years, Marathon was trying to get the oil to cross our territory. But, you know, they're getting their dirty oil from elsewhere, not through our territory. But I just want to say, you know, I mean, I'm a farmer and a writer. I didn't really wish to become pipeline geek. But this is what we're dealing with right now, is that over the past 15 years, the United States has transitioned a lot of its oil to Canada. The largest oil reserves in the world are actually in Venezuela. But as you all know, Venezuela had a different agenda for how their oil should be sold. And that has been the subject of a civil war and a lot of intervention by the United States. And so rather than pay Venezuela a fair price for oil, the United States decided to buttress Canadian tar sands oil. And so the Canadian tar sands are the third largest oil reserves in the world. But those oil reserves are pretty much like asphalt. Tar sands are not normal oil. They aren't gushing. It's like this oil sand, tar sand. It's what it looks like. It's kind of like asphalt when it comes out. And so a few years ago, this is a testimony to what people like you and me do. A few years ago, there was 5 proposed oil pipelines. You see that north, Hardisty, Edmonton, Fort McMurray. The oil has to get out of there, and it's landlocked. And so they had proposed 5 different pipelines. This first one with the dots, that's called Energy East. This purple one up there, that's called Enbridge's Northern Gateway. This blue one here, that is called the Trans Mountain Pipeline. Purple and yellow are the Keystone varieties, and green, Enbridge Line 3. That's what we are battling now, Enbridge Line 3. And you can see that it's intended to go to Superior, right across our territory. Of the 5 pipelines from the tar sands that are up there today, Energy East was canceled in 2017, as was Enbridge's Northern Gateway, that purple one, leaving 3 pipelines. Those 3 pipelines, this blue one here, Trans Mountain, really huge opposition. I'll show you some pictures of that, you know, in Canada, huge opposition. The province of British Columbia and all the First Nations did not want that pipeline. And so huge opposition. And then a year ago, after the price kept going up for the pipeline that no one wanted, the Canadian government bought that pipeline from Kinder Morgan, a U.S. Texas-based corporation. And when they bought it, they paid, I think, $4.8 million for it. 4.8 billion, excuse me, forgot a zero. And the next day, the Canadian court, the federal court in British Columbia, ruled that the pipeline permits were all null and void, that they had no permits because they had not consulted with the First Nations. And so I call that pipeline Trudeau West, because that is something that is owned by the Canadian government, and it's an expensive pipeline that they are trying really hard to have a plan for. The second 2 pipelines, Keystone, as you know, the permits were not issued under the Obama administration. The Trump administration, as per course, is attempting to do everything to get that pipeline going. And in that, you know, Donald Trump, as he has done many times, has waved his wand and said, I'm president, and so I'm going to have a pipeline. And it turned out that the courts ruled that he couldn't just use his magic wand and issue permits, because you had to give a reason why the permit would work and why climate change would not be a factor in you issuing a permit, although, and as the previous president, Barack Obama, had said that it would not be issued because of climate change. So that one's legally on the rocks. And the green pipeline, us, We have had a heated battle in, did I say 7 years? I've been fighting pipelines since 2013. That's a long time to be fighting pipelines, isn't it? Long time. They still have no pipeline. Did I mention that? They have no pipeline. And they did get a permit issued last year by the Minnesota Public Utilities Commission, and then we all sued them, including the state of Minnesota sued them. And so now there is they're in, I refer to it kind of as a giant legal fog. A giant legal fog. We had a court ruling in our favor this last week, and also a ruling that that a permit would not be issued for their water crossing. Expensive business building pipelines that don't work. This is my reservation and our battle over our pipeline. But you can see a little bit here of the intersection between water and oil. You know, because the fact is that this pipeline crosses an area that is about half water and full of wild rice, you know, our most sacred food. And then it also goes directly to Superior, which is at the beginning of, you know, the furthest east point and also the furthest inland port. And so a battle is ensuing, continuing in Wisconsin and in Michigan over the furtherance of this pipeline. And that's an expensive project. And this is what it looks like on the ground. This is in British Columbia. This is water protectors opposing Trudeau West. And this is us in downtown Duluth. This is 2 years ago. You know, one thing that you will notice, and I've found, is that a lot of the opposition to a lot of these pipelines at the front lines are a lot of women. A lot of women that are water protectors. And I'm proud to serve as a water protector with them. And there's me. This is me at the Enbridge shareholders meeting in Calgary in May. I flew up there. I stood there with my friend Charlotte McLeod, Yellowhorn McLeod. And this is a group of tar sands workers that are out of jobs. And the reason they're out of jobs in the tar sands is that it's the most expensive oil in the world. You guys all following me pretty good out there? I don't know. Some of these guys are like, I don't know. All right. Most expensive oil in the world, $82 a barrel. The stuff out of Texas is about $43 a barrel. So why would you want the most expensive oil in the world without a pipeline? That would be the problem. And it's the most expensive oil in the world anyway, and the highest amount of carbon. It's the dirtiest oil in the world. And so they're laying off people in the tar sands. And so there was a rally in downtown Calgary of all these pro-tar sands people. You can see the sign says, lay some pipe. They're screaming, lay some pipe. They're screaming. And I was standing, this woman, Charlotte, and I, you know, we're the water protectors. We go across. There were some cops there. I said, can we stand there? And they said, yep. And so I just stood there, and they were screaming. And that's all I did is I just stood there with my Water is Life sign. And you know, as a young woman, my parents were anti-war activists. And so I went to many a rally. And I remember many a time that I stood there or someone stood there and there was a lot of hostile things said to us, but we just stood our ground. You know, and sometimes that is what nonviolence is you just stand your ground and bear witness. Let them scream. Let them scream. This woman, Charlotte, was standing next to me and she kept trying to talk to him, like explain tar sands economics and that renewable energy was a good thing. I said, don't waste your breath, sister. They are not going to listen. Just stand there, you know. Don't be at peace, you know. So I was pretty zen about the whole thing. Anyway, so that's the depressing part of this lecture. Now I'm going to show you kind of where we need to go. You heard my story. You know, I'm a grandmother. I'm a farmer. I live on my reservation. I harvest wild rice. I got a good gig. You know, I live where the wild things are. All that biodiversity, that's where I live. I live in the place where there's frogs and there's cougars and there's bears and there's, you know, every kind of bird you could imagine, and there's insects. They all live there, you know. They're endemic to the area. If they are migratory, they're fewer in numbers. But if they're endemic, there are many of them. And so, you know, I live in a place where you can eat sugar from a tree. Y'all got that, right? Maple sugaring, right? And it can drink the water from a lake still. So wouldn't you be fighting for that? You know, my job is to keep that. That was a covenant, the agreement between my people and the creators. We took care of things. And so as I look ahead, you know, there is this national discussion now, thankfully, about the Green New Deal. I refer to this as the Sitting Bull Plan. This is art from Standing Rock, and this is an art show that we had, the art of indigenous resistance, and that is Sitting Bull. But I call it the Sitting Bull Plan because a great, great political leader he was, a great spiritual leader, and he said many things, but one of the things he said was, let us put our minds together to see what kind of future we can make for our children. You know, this is not the time when somebody as an expert is going to do this. This is a time when we all roll up our sleeves to make a good future. You know, that is our spiritual opportunity to be the people that choose the good path, the green path, not the scorched path, the people that restore our covenant and restore the dignity of the rights of humans and the rights of nature. So let me tell you what that looks like in my own little world. Well, first of all, this is AOC and the Green New Deal, but as I said, I call it the Sitting Bull Plan. Now, I talked a little bit about energy. You know, I'm sorry, I'm just kind of an energy geek, but you know, we live in this country that's really addicted. Did I mention that several times? You know, and I look around and I'm like, how much embedded carbon is in all of this stuff? Y'all know exactly what I'm saying. You know, our carbon footprint is high. You know, I think that, you know, a few years ago, and I think we may have just been surpassed, we consume more energy in the world per capita than anybody else, except for which country? Canada, actually, because they're colder. You know, so how do we get to be these people that feel entitled to like consume all that, right? Like, how did that happen? Well, part of what happened is that, you know, for those of you who study economics, the more you sell, the more you make. And so there's never been any intention to be efficient. So we're not. So people say you cannot make a future with renewable energy because you can't meet present demand. And I always say, well, why would you want to meet present demand? Because look, between point of origin over here and by the time you use it, you know, in 2008, we wasted 57% of our energy. Between the coal-fired power plant that's super old, running inefficiently, the coal that got into it, and the you know, electrical outlet right here, we waste a lot of energy. We waste a lot of energy. And 57%. And if I thought that was bad, it's worse now. We're up to like 61% of our energy is wasted. And so, you know, what I want us to do is to dial back our economy. Because why wouldn't we want to be an efficient economy? Why would we want to do dumb stuff like waste 2/3 of our energy? That seems like a really dumb decision to make. Why wouldn't we want to be a society that consumes less and is more efficient? Like, you know, Germany maybe, or Sweden, or Denmark, or any other country in the world besides us, pretty much. You know, because you guys don't need this part of the lecture, but some of you are young. You know, a lot of stuff you buy now, you'll be tossing it in 2 months, 3 months. That's America. You know, we buy stuff and we throw it away. And that is really not the future. The future is in renewables. Here's a little bit about the difference in how much energy or how much energy production you get per dollar. And so this is my little community. So my community, I live in the village of Pine Point, and my village has everything you don't want to have. You know, but you live here in Ohio, you have the same kind of concerns I have. You know, we have a drug epidemic, we have an opioid epidemic. We have, you know, so many people incarcerated in my village. We have an immense amount of poverty. We have diabetes. We have a lot of sadness and, you know, so much tragedy. You know, last month we buried 3 people from our village of 300 people. How's that happen? You know, that happens because of a lot of intergenerational trauma, oppression, a lot of drugs, a lot of poor health, and alcohol. So, I guess the story I'm telling you is like, we're the people that nobody really cares about. Let's just be honest. My tribe, my reservation, federal government doesn't care about us, haven't for a long time. So I spent most of my life trying to figure out, we looked around and waited for people to fix things for us, but no one really fixed anything for us. And so we decided we start fixing things ourselves. You look around and you say, who's going to solve it, right? Who is going to solve it? You guys are young people out there. What's your town going to be like 25 years from now or 10 years from now? Where's your water going to come from? Where's your food going to come from? What kind of education system are you going to have? What are you going to think? What are you going to be learning? How will the quality of life for women and children be? How will the quality of, life for old people be? How much violence will there be? And who's in charge of that? Who is in charge of that? To me, that is really the fundamental question. If you want to hope someone else is going to make things cool for you, you're going to be sad because it's not going to happen. Really, the fact is that the future is made by people who decide to make it. Change is inevitable. It's a question of who controls the change. So this is my village's story. We're cold in the wintertime. We live in northern Minnesota, for crying out loud. It's cold as heck. And now most of my people live in these HUD housing projects, and you can't have a wood stove, which is about the dumbest thing I ever heard. So we'll work on that one this year. But what we decided to do is to build these solar thermal panels in my village. So we manufacture 8th Fire Solar, now manufactures solar thermal panels. That means you put them on the south side of your house, full sun side of your house, and when the sun goes in there, the sun warms up these panels that are on the outside, the plexiglass. There's a space in between the plexiglass and the insulation that when it gets to about 90 degrees, the thermostat kicks on the blower fan and it blows hot air into your house. It can save about 25% of your heating bill. For my community, reducing fuel poverty is a really good thing. Because a lot of people have to figure out if they're going to eat or heat, literally. And so, when we talk about peace, peace is also this freedom from misery and this, you don't want to be fear your ultimate freezing, right? And I'm just going to be honest with you, because in a time of climate chaos, in a time of climate change, you're going to want to have more local, renewable energy that is, going to keep your houses warm. Because you have no guarantee. You saw that chart before of the grid. You have no guarantee things will go well. Expect they won't, and have a little bit of protection. So this is who builds them. There's me with my guys. I don't even think I have any children in this. Usually I have a son. I have a son who works there. I have a nephew. This guy over on the far right is my nephew. This is one of my sons here. And this is a solar thermal panel we're putting up on the south side of our housing project wall. As I said, it saves us about 20% of our heating bill. Then this is tribes nationally. This is just, to the Western tribes. I laugh, I see Guy here from Standing Rock. He knows it's super windy. Very windy, those reservations. My tribe has class 4 wind. We're those ones over in Minnesota, the northern blue dot. But all of those reservations to the west, most of them have class 4, 5, 6, 7 wind, which is commercial available wind. All of that is commercial wind, and I call that justice, because most of our tribal communities in the western part of the United States and Canada have produced a lot of coal, a lot of uranium for American industry for 50 or 60 years. Huge environmental impact to our people, a lot of cheating of us on our royalties. And now, to me, the next economy, the 8th fire, time is one where we will have this renewable energy. Now, I'm going to talk about a bigger picture of this. This is a project called Solutionary Rail. Very interesting. Solutionary Rail. Have any of you heard of this? No. Okay. Oh, I get to be the one who tells you about it. So there's this really innovative idea. Say that we took this opportunity and did the right thing. Oh, thank you. She's with the timing. Thank you. Say that we had this opportunity and did the right thing. And say that we, just think of it this way. If you have a country as big as this, America, what do you think is better in terms of physics in transporting stuff? Rubber on the road or steel on the tracks? Steel. It's about 50% more efficient than rubber on the road. And if you powered those trains with electric trains, they'd be another 60% more efficient. I give you an example. The car that I drove to the airport today was, I had to get a rental car. It was a long story, but I drove a Dodge 1500 pickup truck to the airport today. Kind of a total gas hog, but a combustion engine, we all are driving those things, and a combustion engine is only about 16% efficient. An electric engine, like in a Tesla, is 65% efficient. Interesting thought, huh? And the reason is like a combustion engine is